Hello everybody and welcome to this masterclass by Maggie MacDonnell from Canada. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Maggie. After completing her bachelor's degree, Maggie spent 5 years volunteering and working in sub-Saharan Africa, largely in the field of HIV and AIDS prevention. After completing her master's, she found her country was beginning to wake up to the decades of abuse that Canadian indigenous people had lived through, including assaults on the environment and huge economic and social inequality. She started teaching in Saluit, Canada, home to the second northernmost Inuit community in Quebec, with a population of just over 1,300 people. It cannot be reached by road, only by air. And in winters, temperatures go as low as -25. But I think you said -50. 50, yeah, earlier today. Yeah. 5-0, that's amazing. That is very, very cold. It's quite weird when we're standing here in the heat talking about that. There were 6 suicides in 2015, all affecting young males between the ages of 18 and 25. And due to the harsh conditions, there are very high rates of teacher turnover, which is a significant barrier to education in the Arctic. And there are tremendous gender issues in the Inuit region of Nunavik, where teenage pregnancies are common and high levels of sexual abuse exist. And gender roles are often burdening young girls with very heavy domestic duties. Maggie created a life skills program just for them. And this included securing over $30,000 in funding to prepare hot meals for the community. She also created a partnership with the daycare centre to enable her students to gain valuable on-the-job mentorship and to improve their understanding of early childhood education. Also, in areas of high deprivation, isolation and limited resources, teenagers often turn to drinking and smoking and even drugs and self-harm as forms of escape. Maggie therefore quickly established a fitness centre that has become the hub for youth and adults in the local community to embrace a healthier lifestyle and to help them grow stronger both physically and mentally. Over to you, Maggie.
Thank you so much. I think she just explained everything, so basically I'm just going to add a whole lot of visuals to what she just said there, okay? So like she said, my name's Maggie. I'm a non-Indigenous Canadian, but I've been exceptionally privileged to be able to work for the last almost 7 years with Inuit youth in the Arctic of Canada. So I actually have 3 of my students here today. How fantastic is that? Can I get them to stand up? They are also now officially in the 100-degree club, going from -50 to +50. I'll be honest. I put a lot of information into this presentation. Basically, it's like a food fight, but it's one way. I'm going to throw so much at you guys. What sticks, sticks, okay? Some stuff might end up on the floor. That's okay. We can talk about that later. We can pick it up. We can go through it, okay? Hopefully, I'll actually get through it all, but I wouldn't be surprised if I get stuck on slide number 28. So don't worry, okay? The title, Project-Based Learning, Arctic Tales of Community Development, Youth Resilience, and Suicide Prevention. This is the brief outline. I want you to meet Jason. Jason's not here. He is fantastic, okay? Jason is kind of my typical student profile that I work with. And he said it's okay for me to share these details of his story, just so that you know that. Jason is an Inuk young male, about 15, 16 years of age. He grew up in a family where there was a lot of addictions and abuse of drugs. Both of his parents don't work in the formal economy. He grew up in a house that is in desperate need of renovation, reflective of the housing crisis that affects much of the North. He himself basically dropped out of school probably by the age of like 9 or 10, 11. He was just going maybe 30% of the time because he was exposed, obviously, to a lot of drugs and alcohol, etc. He did start smoking both cigarettes and marijuana at a really young age. But you probably wouldn't know that at this picture, okay? Because here he is crossing the finish line of a half marathon in Hawaii. How cool is that, okay? And this time is a little wrong because it started with when the full marathon people left. But he finished that in his goal, which was 2 hours, okay? And along the way, that journey of that marathon, he quit cigarettes, okay? He quit marijuana, and he came back to school. And a lot of that was because we had project-based learning to sort of embrace him, right? So we're going to meet Jason later on. He's going to pop up in some of the different photos. What I'm going to do right now is try to quickly go through the histories and traumas that have affected the Arctic. I'm going to talk about how that affects student behaviors that I experience. I'll tell you a bit about my influences, my community development approach, the keys that I think about when I'm trying to develop projects, and I'm just going to overwhelm you with examples, because that really helps me. I'm more of a hands-on type person. If I see things, I get it, okay? I know what you're talking about, right? And then we'll sort of do some wrap-ups. So, where exactly do I work? Yes, I do work in Canada, okay? And I'm actually from way over here, and my mom's here today, and she's from this beautiful little island, okay? But I now work in this what we call this blue area, which is the Canadian Arctic, and I work kind of up here, okay? That's roughly where the community of Salouet is. Just so you know, okay, in case you're ever worried, in case you ever want to come and visit, we'd love to have you. You're going to have to start saving your money or meet some pretty luxurious people around this hotel conference, perhaps, because it costs $4,000 to travel from here down to here. Okay? 4,000 Canadian dollars. That's about, what, 3,200 USD? This is what it looks like. Isn't it gorgeous? Okay? This is what it looks like in the summer. Because of where we're located, we get almost 24-hour daylight. We get these beautiful sunsets. This is Larry's cousins actually coming back from a fishing trip. You can see some of the tundra scapes there. And this is what it looks like in the winter, okay? So we get this kind of like 6 weeks a year, and then we get a whole lot of this, okay? Mainly this is what we get. And I think this demonstrates the fact that it's a fly-in community. This is actually some water, part of the Hudson Bay, and it's completely frozen. It's frozen like 12 feet deep, okay? A plane can land on it. The whole community, 1,500 people can come out and dance on and celebrate. We could do Irish dancing if my new friend will come up and do that with us, right? But this also makes things quite expensive because a lot of food needs to be flown in. And like I said, it already costs $4,000 just to get a ticket up there. Imagine what the cost of food is going to be. Who do I work with? These are the Canadian Inuit. This is more a picture from their traditional lifestyles. Maybe 3 generations ago, 4 generations ago, this might have been a more common scene. Where a lot of people see the Arctic and the cold as like really harsh conditions. One thing I've experienced since living up there is how much the Inuit love the cold and embrace it and see it as a gift and a resource. I mean, they're able to use the snow blocks to carve ingenious igloo housing styles, right? They were able to live off the land so well. This would all be clothing made out of seal skin that they would have stitched together. It's just fantastic. As a heat source, they would have been burning oil from fish or whales. Okay, so that's a brief introduction visually to the context. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I see the world, okay? I was lucky enough to go to do my master's at the University of Toronto. And I was surrounded by all this fancy, inaccessible language, right? Post-Colonial lenses, feminist lenses, etc. It was a little bit intimidating at first, but I think if you guys have a heart like I do, you probably also look through the world in these lenses as well. So I just want to make them a little bit more approachable, okay? So put up these glasses if you got a pair, okay? Okay? You are now all feminists, okay? And it's not threatening, it's not crazy, it just means that you care about girls, you care about boys, and you care about how they relate. That's it, right? So later on, I might need you to put on those feminist lenses. You can put them on all the time, though, if you want. Okay? These here are your post-colonial lenses, right? You put them on when you want to become a really deep thinker, right? But actually, oh, you look good, you look good. It's actually just about looking at history and maybe how some people lost power in how another group might have come in and taken that power, taken parts of their culture from them. So it's really not that intimidating. I'm going to briefly go through some of the traumas that the Inuit people have lived through as part of the colonial history that they've lived through. There was forced relocation. So the Inuit lived kind of a nomadic life where they moved from hunting spot to fishing spot, etc., right? But the Canadian government had other plans in mind. We wanted them to be more settled, more stable, to kind of help us claim the Arctic as Canadian, right? So there was a lot of pressure on them to live in permanent villages. And that even ended up meaning that families were broken up. And some families were pressured into moving up into parts of the high Arctic, which were so harsh and created so much trauma for them. Another big trauma that the Inuit have lived through, and again, this is only in the last maybe 50, 60 years that they've lived through this, is residential schools. Thank goodness our federal government has at least apologized for this. But just so you know, some of you might not be from Canada or from North America, our federal government actually had a policy of what they called the assimilation of Indians, or the assimilation of Inuit. And so they would fly into these villages, and they would actually remove a child from a family. And they would put them on that plane and bring them to Winnipeg or Ottawa or down to a more southern community where they would have to live for 8, 9 months without no chance to return home. They were beaten if they spoke their mother tongue. They were internally oppressed, right? Told that their culture what was of no value, right? Also, what is particularly shocking is there was high rates of physical and sexual abuse that happen in these schools. And now they're even finding graveyards around these schools where children who died were buried right there. Families had no way to communicate with them. There was language barriers, geographical barriers, etc. So this obviously means that in the context I work in, there's a little bit of distrust around the education system because, for example, if I look at Luke, Larry, and Sam here, it could easily be their grandparents or great-grandparents that experienced this to some extent. Imagine the pain you would feel when your child is ripped from you, right? One last thing I'll talk about quickly is the dog slaughter. Dogs is how people moved around in the North. They were their Ferraris, their Lamborghinis, right? Again, the federal government comes through our Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The police are our authority figures in our Canadian lives, right? They actually came and they slaughtered the dogs. That's like somebody slashing all the wheels in the parking lot out there. How could Larry's grandfather go and harvest and provide for his family anymore? How could he safely go out on the land? The dogs were like family members. When I speak to elders, they still cry thinking about it. The day they came home and saw all their dogs dead. The dogs used to keep them safe on the land because a dog can navigate a blizzard, but a skidoo can't navigate a blizzard. And I've had elders specifically tell me that when they came home and they saw that the dogs had been slaughtered, that was the day that their father started to drink. Because that's how he started to deal with all that pain, right? Residential schools, forced relocation, dog slaughter, etc. But I won't go on too much more. Am I getting the net okay? So I don't want to. They've adjusted in a big way from a land-based economy to a cash-based economy. This has been a rapid cultural change. And something that I think is really interesting, at least in my perspective, because I have worked in colonial places that have been colonized before, like Tanzania, Botswana, Congo, etc. But I really think that the way the Canadian government did it, it went right into the family unit with those colonial tools, right? And it caused a lot of damage right there. And that's a very intimate damage for young people to be born into future generations. Quick socioeconomic overview. Food insecurity at 52%. A housing crisis predicted to be 70%. This is the Inuit compared to non-Inuit Canadians. 70% more likely to be living in overcrowded conditions. Many of my students sleep on their living room floor. They don't have their own bedrooms. I know adults who are 23, they've got a girlfriend, they've got 3 kids, they're raising them in a bedroom. You can look through here, there's a tremendous high cost of living. There's a low graduation rate. It does vary by village. Some villages are doing stronger. But last year, Luke right here was the only student from his French sector to graduate. And I'm sure he started with probably 10 or 12 kids when he was in primary school. A lot of parents are single-parent households. There's a lot of drug and alcohol addictions. According to some global level research, the Inuit live on par with Saudi Arabia, right? I'm just stressing this because a lot of times when we think of Canada, we don't think of this part of Canada, right? Student profile, okay? Oh, I should say, I chose this graphic because I feel like their landscape has been shattered by the traumas and the colonization, right? It's very difficult for them to navigate that. And here again, I put another youth there because they're on these small little ice floes, you know? They don't have enough housing. Food's tremendously expensive. There's drug and alcohol addictions. All these things are out there, right? They deal with a lot of mental health challenges from all those traumas, right? They experience domestic and sexual violence. There's homelessness. So many have lost a close person to suicide, right? Youth have fallen into this gap, right? This gap is created by colonization, traumas, and decades of underfunding. And they're in between cultures, trying to decide a modern culture, a traditional culture, etc. And all this has, unfortunately, come together in the last 2 years in the village that I live in. Oh, wait. First, put on your feminist lenses. Who has a feminist lens? Okay. So we can't just look at the population generally. I like that one. You got to think about how are girls doing in this area. Okay. So, well, let's check it out. Oh, it's kind of hard to read with these things on. Didn't test this before. There's high rates of teen pregnancy. Research shows that 50% have survived sexual abuse. Domestic duties are downloaded onto them. Every day when I'm teaching girls, one of them has to go home and make lunch, make dinner, take care of the kids, their younger siblings. But my boy students never have that responsibility. They're more likely to be in the formal economy. They're often, I find, providers for their homes economically, even when they're still in school. I know Sam was working as a teenager and providing for her own household, even at that tender age. There's a lot of single moms, and girls kind of become a surrogate parent, especially that older girl child will end up sort of being the extra mom or the dad to all the kids that come along after. Okay, so that was your feminist lens. So it wasn't too bad, right? Being a feminist, just briefly. All of these issues have come together, and we're currently in a suicide crisis. In the community that I live in, which is only 1,400 people, I think, we might be 1,300. I'll have to see if any new babies were born while we're gone. But there was 10 suicides in 2 years, all affecting young people. They're buried right there in that picture. One of the memories that continues to haunt me as a non-Indigenous Canadian, arriving there, living with those kids, is I still have this memory of being at the funeral, walking with the community over to the graveyard, and watching 15, 16-year-old boys dig a hole to bury their classmate. That's harsh. To dig a hole to bury their classmate, they actually put him into the ground. This is something my students have had to deal with. This is a photo that will come up on Facebook. This is one of my favorite students, Mo, Sam's cousin. He loves hockey. His favorite player is Ovechkin, for any hockey players out there, so we call him Movechkin. It's kind of a cool name, okay? He's still so hurt by the friends that he's lost, and there's research to show that every time you lose somebody to suicide, you become a little bit more at risk of that. So imagine that in a community of 1,400 people, right? Already losing, just in 2 years, 10 people, where everybody's connected. I can say in that community, every single person has been touched by suicide, multiple times. But I'm an optimist, okay? I'm hopeful. One of my favorite sayings is, don't give me problems, give me solutions, okay? And I think that education is one of those solutions, okay? My favorite quote about education comes from a famous adult educator called Moses Cody. And he said, education is also all about empowering people to become masters of their own destiny, okay? I want Larry to be a master of his destiny, not my Western, Southern, European destiny that I might have outlined for him, right? I want him to be able to figure out what his personal destiny is, taking into account his own culture, his own traditions, right? One way I help do this is by using what I call the Abcds of Development, okay? I take an asset-based community development approach. A lot of times we look into communities and we just see needs, gaps, underfunding, etc. But we have to work with what's there, okay? What's there right now that we can work with. We have to recognize the talents, the strengths, the resources, and interests that are currently in the community. It's an opposite of a needs assessment. When I'm trying to develop projects, I bring that ABCD approach, trying to find the positive. I want to find out, hey, my student Rebecca, what are your interests? What do you care about? What gets you excited? What's going to make you come to school, right? And then I try to match those talents and interests with meaningful, real-life opportunities, okay? So a lot of the time for me with the school, I take myself outside the school. I'm trying to put myself in the community a bit more. And I'll explain this project later on because it's a fantastic picture that should be explained more. And what I'm always trying to do is create new platforms where my students can receive direct benefit or praise. A lot of my students come into my class with harsh reputations. They're seen as bullies. They've been in trouble with the police. They come from families stigmatized by foster care, okay? So they're not seen as the elite in the community, right? So I try to find them new ways to present themselves to the community to let their talents and gifts shine. So for example, when I look at an issue in the community, bullying or vandalism, okay? What I'll do is I'll put on my I'm hopeful lenses, okay? Don't give me problems, give me solutions. So bullying, vandalism, I see an opportunity in that, okay? Kids love to bike. My students are pretty manual. Bikes are getting destroyed all the time by all the bullying and vandalism going on. Hello, opportunity. Let's make a bike repair shop. Okay, so this is one of the projects that I would do at the school. And this is a project that would engage a student like Jason, who's kind of way out here. He's in the area of disenfranchisement, okay, of the community, right? He's smoking a lot of weed. He's hanging out in his shack. He's kind of demotivated, you know. But I can use something like this to sort of try to bring him in a little bit. Hey, Jay, man, you should come. Check us out. We're doing some bikes. Bring your bike over. We'll fix it up, right? And then I start to pull him in more into the community. And that's a photo of Jimmy and X-Man, our famous bike shop repair guy. And how fantastic was this? Because what we did is we actually went to the dump and scavenged around the community. We found all these old broken bikes. Okay, so it's kind of like recycling, pro-environmental too, just to give some bonus points for that. Okay, and we would bring them to our repair shop, and little kids, how cute is he, would walk their little bikes over, right? And we would fix them. And here are my older teenagers, some of them, again, who've done some bullying in the community, right? Now they're doing something really helpful. They're fixing that cute little 5-year-old's bike. And the mom and dad see that, and wow, okay. Now we're getting some what I call new little platforms for them to stand on. Yeah. Now they're cool, right? They're starting to do some good stuff, right? We built a bike park. We did lots of cool things like that. Okay, another issue. There's nothing to do. This town is boring. You know, nothing going on, right? I hear that a lot from the young people. Okay, but what do you guys like to do? You got interests. Oh, you like sports? You seem to have an ample amount of free time as well. Hey, let's do some super ambitious extracurricular activities, right? So again, when I think of the school and I use a project-based approach, okay, I don't want my school to have like static boundaries, okay? I want it to be permeable. I want it to be flexible, okay? So that I can sort of reach out right here and do some cool sports stuff, right? And attract some kids into the school. And they might just come for that at first and then jump back over there. Okay, they weren't too sure if they liked the school enough yet, if they liked me enough yet. But then they come back 2, 3, 4 times, and then what do you know? Wow, I've got them in the school. Maybe it's only 3 out of 5 days a week, but maybe a month later it's 4 out of 5 days a week, right? Jason pops up again, right? I found out Jason loved table tennis. I was like, yes. I happened to be, at one point in my life, the 3rd best table tennis player in my province. That was a pretty cool thing. I did that when I was 17 and a half, okay? Like, you like table tennis? I'm going to help you out. I'm going to play table tennis after school. Because if you come to school, I'll play with you after. I'll teach you some cool serves, some spins, some tricks. He showed up. He was chosen as the best table tennis player in all of Nunavik. He went to Greenland for the Arctic Winter Games. This kid, who was smoking pot in a shack, is now an ambassador for the entire region and came in, I think, 3rd at the Arctic Winter Games. Again, this is Larry demonstrating a high kick. We try to promote local indigenous Inuit games as much as possible. We have a fantastic volleyball program. And what I love about doing things in the real world is they just expand in ways that I couldn't even imagine, right? So all of a sudden, just from running volleyball and basketball practices, I got in touch on Facebook with other teachers, and then, wow, we brought together 5 villages to come to Salouet for a whole 4 or 5 days of a girls' sport and health festival. Another issue, a lack of safe recreational spaces, right? I put on my positive lenses. I can deal with that. Let's work on solutions. What are some talents in the area, right? Well, the municipality has this big open space in front of, on the top floor of the arena. They're not using it for anything, right? And there's some funding money out there. Put together a little proposal. What do you know? We got $100,000 and we launched the first fitness center in the community. So now young people had a whole nother safe place to be, right? Fitness center, right? And I'm there every night, secretly trying to bring them into school, okay? Don't tell them when you get back, okay? Right, it's my secret, right? Then, this fitness center became home of our running club, okay? One slogan I would always say is, when you run by yourself, you run fast. Okay, well, actually, when I run by myself, I'm still pretty slow. But Larry's really fast, okay? But when you run with many, you go so far, okay? Because I'm not a competitive person. I mean, I love it when my students own the podium, and I'm like, yeah, like I coached him. He came in number 1, yeah, right? But what I really love is all the other youth development that's going on in those moments, right? And I'll go through some slides to talk about that. And one thing I want to talk about in particular is that these youth are not just runners, they're philanthropists. They fundraised $30,000 to give to other northern youth throughout their run club. There's Jay popping up again. He's running a raffle, okay? They're getting media and public speaking experience. If Martha Stewart is out there listening, I want to thank you for posting that chocolate chip cookie recipe online. It's made me over $7,000. Thank you. Okay? Jay, there he is in Hawaii, having a fantastic time and building a social network, right? Now he has teammates, all these other people who run with him, the people that go to the fitness center with him too. And he's connected to the fitness center. And he's connected to the school, okay? Then, the coolest boss ever at my school board, yeah, she's sitting right there, right in front of me, okay? Put up your hand. She says, oh, by the way, I got a little extra budget. Why don't I send your students on a tour to promote their healthy messages? Sure, no problem, I'll do that. So we toured 5 villages with the Run Club, taking really cool planes like that. We started run clubs. I shouldn't say we, they did it. I didn't talk at all. They were speaking in Inuktitut to 200 kids at a time. We started new running clubs. So here's Jason, pothead, delinquent, right? Now he's a healthy role model, and his message is so strong because he knows what those kids are going through, and he can speak to them directly in a way that I never could. Another issue. Young people are disengaged from the community. They're disenfranchised, especially a lot of my female students who come to my program. But I know that they want to connect with the community, and I know that there's funding out there. I'm a funding machine. Every year I bring in about $80,000, right? I just love pumping out proposals, okay? I created this thing called Acts of Kindness. So again, I wanted them to have these platforms, right, where they could communicate with and share their talents and resources with the community. Here we are working with a local activist around who talks about healing from sexual abuse. She comes and my students work with her to share that message. How powerful is that, considering my statistics say at least 50% of girls have lived through that own experience themselves. Here they are doing meals for elders, okay? This was an epic day. I'm at the daycare where they have a placement. Phone rings. They're like, Maggie, phone's for you. I'm like, hello. I'm like, oh, Mr. Mayor, how's it going, right? The mayor calls me. I always feel pretty cool when he calls me. I feel like we have a personal connection, right? He's like, Maggie, election's coming up. Oh, what election? The federal election. Oh, yeah, the federal election. He's like, do you think your students could, like, run the federal election in the community? But my students are supposed to be kind of like illiterate, disenfranchised, somewhat over here. He's like, no, we need you guys. We see what you're doing in the community. Can you help us? Boom. They ran, me and my students, okay, we ran the federal election in the community. From 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. Fantastic. And this girl here had just turned 18 that day. So now it was an opportunity for her to engage in democracy herself. And I think I've gotten past my time limit. So somebody should be keeping me in check here. So I'll try to wrap up. Yeah. Am I all done? You keep going. Okay. What's also happened is now my students are graduating. They just sent me this photo 2 days ago. Evie and Penina, they're about to graduate. They just did their photos 2 days ago. They wanted me to see them. That's Louisa. Oh, she's a great kid. When I first met Louisa, she was always in the principal's office, right? Always getting in trouble. She was in the regular classroom environment, but she could really challenge authority. She, again, is one of the older kids in her family who basically took care of everything. So she really knows a lot and really didn't like being in that environment where other people are telling her what to do, right? So I used to always see her in the principal's office, and I'd tease her. I'm like, oh, is this your office now? You're here every day, you know, right? And luckily, she came into my program. She was fantastic, okay? This is her 2 months after she had her baby. She stayed into school Up to 3 days before she gave birth, she was back 2 days after birth. Okay? Still breastfeeding. She lives close to the school. Okay? She graduated, and now she works as a special educator at our school. This is the beauty of project-based learning. I could get Louisa to come into the school environment. I could create new platforms for her. I'm also bringing the school out into the community when necessary. And now she's permanently in this community, right? She's contributing all the time. Again, pull the plug whenever you've got to. These are photos of a hunting group that we put together. Girls are often more at risk or disenfranchised from being on the land, which is a really powerful place for healing. So again, I knew it was one of their interests. So we went out there, we got some funding, and this is Rebecca lining up for her first ever shot. I think I could have called the club Girls with Guns, but might have had trouble getting funding. So I went with Girls Adventure Club. I think it was a savvy move by the end of it. Okay? So she shoots her first caribou. She skins it. She provides some for her mom. Okay? There's her and her sister. Her older sister was crying. She was so proud of her, right? We walked all the carcass, the meat home, and for 1 week, I and about 12 other people lived off of that harvest. Amazing. How empowering Rebecca must have felt at that moment to provide food for all those people. These are my keys to building relationships. Be in the community, not just in the school. I like to be on Facebook too, okay? Have a good sense of humor. Be genuine. I have this idea of a rule of 10. I have a little stone usually in my pocket that my nephew gave me, okay? And he's a really positive kid, and every time I hold on to that stone, it reminds me, I gotta say 10 positive things to my students today. I'm gonna catch them doing something good, right? You have to show respect for the culture. Every day is a fresh start. Whatever baggage you went through yesterday, leave that behind, okay? The bell went, that part of school is over. Give those kids a new chance to come in the next day. It's a fresh start. Make sure the classroom is safe and secure. Believe in them, and make sure you let them know that.
I'm going to have to